Hi, Bucknuts readers, subscribers, Ohio State fans. I'm Patrick Murphy here with Dave Biddle. We are just outside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center here on the football field where Ohio State just got done with what was this practice? Six, seven, something like that.
Yep.
The Buckeyes had a scrimmage this past weekend. Ryan Day was pretty pleased with how it went. We just met with him. But the big news today, obviously, Ryan Day said, and Dave just posted a story of this on Bucknuts, that there has been separation in the quarterback race. That he was not ready to name a starter yet, but he was ready to say that C.J. Stroud has separated himself. Dave, just your thoughts on C.J. Stroud. You know, what we expected, him pulling away a little bit in this competition, but you know, the situation here.
Yeah, knowing what we know from working with Ryan Day, getting a chance to cover him now for 5 years, including his time as offensive coordinator, I didn't expect him to name a starter. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. This was his way of naming a starter, in my opinion. He named C.J. Stroud the starter, in my opinion, by calling him the leader and everything he said about him and why he's the leader at this point and why he's gained separation. And we're hearing Kyle McCord's playing really well. Yeah, I mean, even though he stopped short of actually naming him the starter, to me, it felt like he named him the starter. So, but like Patrick said, we've been hearing this from sources that C.J. Stroud was the guy. And again, Kyle McCord's been playing well. We're hearing from sources that tells you how well C.J. Stroud has been playing. So no surprise, but it was good to have Ryan Day finally say that there has been some separation at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and like you said, I think everyone kind of knows that this is C.J. Stroud's job to lose at this point. I know we haven't seen a ton of him. We did see him in the spring game, but what about C.J. Stroud has you confident, and now Ryan Day admitting that he's probably the guy for the Buckeyes now going forward?
Yeah, I would say mostly his accuracy and his ability to do a little bit of everything. Running's not going to be his forte, but he's not a terrible runner. He's going to run more than like a Dwayne Haskins did. He's not going to be a Justin Fields or anything like that, or a Braxton Miller or anything like that. But he can hurt you with the run a little bit, or you have to respect it. But he can make all of the throws. Doesn't have, I wouldn't say like an absolute cannon, but it has a very good arm and is very accurate with the ball. He's a heady quarterback. He's tough. He's a leader. You see his teammates just kind of rally around him. You can just kind of tell. And he's kind of a cool customer. I like what I'm seeing out of Kyle McCord, though, what we've seen out here. We've been at practice, what we're hearing from sources. But there's several things I like about C.J. Stroud. And I also like that this wasn't a kid that was like some prodigy quarterback when he was in 8th grade. He didn't even start till his junior year of high school because he was a basketball player. And then against top competition in California, just kept getting better and better and better to the point where he was a star. And I think his best football is way ahead of him. So get excited about C.J. Stroud, Buckeye fans.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things I saw, you mentioned he's not quite as mobile as some of the quarterbacks Ohio State's had, but really reminds me of Justin Fields, the way he play fakes, the way, you saw the throw in the spring game to Chris Olave. So if you can get a guy who can play, somewhat at that level, you're going to be pretty good, as we saw with Justin Fields. The other big story that came out over the weekend, Quinn Ewers, he's here. He's here.
He's practicing right here today.
Yeah, he practiced here today. And this is a guy who was supposed to be the number one recruit in the country in the 2022 class, wasn't supposed to be here until January, elected for NIL reasons to enroll early. He enters a room, Kyle McCord, who you mentioned, Jack Miller is partway through all camp. What were your expectations for Quinn? I mean, like Ryan Day said, they were still showing him the locker room and stuff today. So it's going to be a slow build, right? I mean, he's not a guy who can here and take this job before the season even starts.
That's correct. His role is going to be, he's going to be the best scout team quarterback in the history of football. I don't see an area where he wins the job at any point this year, with one caveat. We saw what happened in 2014. It would take that. Not just one guy getting hurt, 2 guys getting hurt. And right now, Jack Miller ahead of him. So maybe 3 guys getting hurt. That would be, for me, the starting quarterback. Now, can he get meaningful snaps? We'll see. I'm critical of that too. Maybe later in the year, he gets hurt. I just don't see at any point this year him surpassing C.J. Stroud or Kyle McCord. So it would take injuries to those guys. Now, will Quinn Ewers play at all this year? Yes. I think it's going to be garbage minutes. I think it's like fourth quarter of blowouts, things like that. But I think they will find a way to get him some playing time. But his main role will be, he will be the best damn scout quarterback in the land. We have the best damn band in the land, hopefully the best damn team in the land, and we're definitely going to have the best damn scout quarterback in the land.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see we're going to get to see some of practice, I think, Wednesday. So watching Quinn Ewers, how much they're having him do. Let's keep in mind, even a Kyle McCord, who enrolled as part of the 2021 class, he's still been here 7 months now. Quinn Ewers has been here 2 days. So, like, it's you can be as talented. It's going to take some time. I could, as Dave said, see maybe starting games in the second half of the season if the Buckeyes are up big and things like that. But, we'll certainly see. The rest of the scrimmage, the quarterback's the big thing, but Ryan Day touched on a lot of different things. What stood out to you? What have you heard from the scrimmage that maybe Buckeye fans should know about?
Just reading between the lines, I think TreVeyon Henderson's a guy that they're not going to come out and just anoint him as like, oh, he's the guy, when they feel good about some of the other running backs. I know Mayan Williams is a guy they feel really good about. They like Master Teague. I know he's not always a fan favorite, but when the coaches all like him, that should tell you a lot. And they do. They all like him. All 3 of those guys are going to be heavily involved. I think even Marcus Crowley could be more involved than people think. All 4 of those guys are going to play, and they're going to work it out. But TreVeyon Henderson's a guy that, through sources that have been telling me stuff, sources that have been telling Patrick stuff, some of our other staff members through sources, and what the coaches and teammates are saying on the record about TreVeyon Henderson. Get excited about him. Then I'll go to the other side of the ball. I would say Cody Simon's a guy that I've heard has stepped up a lot. And Josh Proctor's a guy that has always had the talent, but it seems like he's really putting it together mentally. He needs to be more consistent. It seems like as a senior, he is doing that. So those are some of the things that stand out. Obviously, DeJuan Jones, literally and figuratively, maybe has been the biggest story of camp, him locking down that starting right tackle job, which is allowed Thayer Mumford to move inside the left guard. That's been a big story. And this offensive line is going to be talented. One of the best offensive lines in the country, maybe the biggest offensive line. So there's a lot of different storylines, but I would say, DeJuan Jones, TreVeyon Henderson, other than quarterback, of course, what we're talking about right now. Cody Simon looking good at linebacker. Taraja Mitchell looking good at linebacker is another good story there. And then I would say Josh Proctor becoming a dude, as Patrick heard from one of his sources.
Yeah, I see a couple people have mentioned that the connection's a little spotty. We apologize. We came outside here to do this, and we may be a little bit too far from where the internet is, but it looks like you guys can hear us all right. You mentioned that offensive line, and I wanted to touch on that because that was a surprise when we came out here last week and saw Thayer Mumford, maybe the best left tackle returning in the country, playing left guard. Nicholas Petit-Frere moved over to left tackle. DeJuan Jones at right tackle. This may be the biggest offensive line in the country. Just with, you have 4 guys, including Paris Johnson, who came to Ohio State to play tackle, now playing on one offensive line. What does that allow this team to do, especially with the young quarterback there? They say they want to have the best 5. When you have a big line like that, what does that allow for, and you mentioned still figuring out some things at running back?
Yeah, what's special about this offensive line, you can have a big offensive line that maybe is good in the run game, but it doesn't have a lot of quick guys, maybe is susceptible to pass rushers, and maybe not even great pass rushers. Maybe guys that are just so can get around a big tackle because he can't move that well. It's not the case with this line. I mean, DeJuan Jones moves really well from his basketball background, and probably just naturally he moves well, unusually well for a 6'8", 370-pound man. So it allows them to be, more physical in the run game, but not give up anything as far as pass pro. You look at a guy like Paris Johnson, he fires ball quicker than a normal guard, as they were saying, because of his time at tackle and having to be quick. And interior defensive linemen are not used to that. They're not used to a guard being that quick. And he also has the power, so he's not giving up any strength. Chris Johnson is just crushing guys in there. The word Greg Stodrawa used was he's destroying guys in there. So it allows them to be more physical without giving up anything in pass pro. Get excited about this. And even Harry Miller at center, 6'4", 315. Yeah. He's the mid group. It's 315. I mean, he just looks like a Hulk, and he's the smallest guy of this offensive line. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and Harry Miller, obviously, people saw him with some struggles last year. Let's remember, this is a guy who moved positions, center to guard, didn't get work. In the Michigan State game, had to move back to center. Michigan hadn't practiced that for some time. So I'm certainly willing to see what Harry Miller does the full off season. Obviously, one of the more talented offensive linemen in a couple classes ago. The other thing we did today, special teams. And I know that's not always, I saw somebody ask about it, so I wanted to address it. Talk to Parker Fleming. I know that's not always the first thing on people's minds, but last year, and in the spring especially, the Buckeyes were not great, field goal kicking, things like that. What did you take away from kind of the Parker Fleming part of our press conference today?
Yeah, I mean, if fans out there might not be too into special teams, you might not think too much about it until somebody shanks a punt or the Buckeyes miss a field goal to lose a game or to make a game close. Hopefully they won't lose any games this year. First of all, Parker Fleming is extremely impressive. As his first year as quality control coach for the last 2 years, Ryan Day promoted him to special teams coordinator, and you can see why Ryan Day has a lot of faith in him. Parker Fleming, very, very impressive guy. So at punter, Jesse Mirko, it's going to be his job. No surprise. He's the one scholarship punter on the roster. Young man, not quite as young as most freshmen, young man from Perth, Australia. And they interestingly said, like when they had Cam Johnston here for his 4 years here, one of the best punters ever come through Ohio State, they strictly did the Aussie punts with him. He'd roll out to one side, obviously usually his right since he was a right-footed punter. And now in the NFL, Cam Johnston does the traditional American punt. With Jesse Mirko, sounds like they're going to do a little bit of both. Maybe they're not letting the cat out of the bag there, but Parker Fleming was asked about that, and he said Jesse Mirko is doing a good job, and they're working on doing both the rollout Aussie punt and the traditional American punt. He says you get more hang time at the American punt, but the Aussie punt allows you to do some other things. It might deaden the ball a little easier, and you get a little more backspin on the ball that way. You also, he didn't talk about this, you also get your coverage guys down the field a little more with the Aussie punt because as you're rolling out, those guys are running down the field, and it makes it easier for coverage. We'll see what they do there. He has practiced both before he even got to Ohio State with the Pro Kick Australia. Mirko did both, so we'll see what happens there. Kicker is interesting to me, guys, because if they truly believed in Seibert as the man, is it Seibert or Seibert? Seibert. Jake Seibert. And maybe they do. He's only entering a second year. But if they truly believe he was the guy, I don't think they would have gone out and gotten Noah Ruggles from North Carolina to transfer in here as like a fourth or fifth year guy on scholarship, no less. That tells me that they weren't quite sold on Seibert. They at least wanted some competition, and they have not settled on who the field goal guy is going to be yet. Maybe it might be a competition that goes into the season. Maybe one guy will handle long field goals, one guy will handle short field goals, one guy will be the kickoff guy, the other guy will be the field goal guy. We'll see, but that sounds like a really good competition there between Seibert and Ruggles. And again, I don't think they would have brought Ruggles in if they were really comfortable with the situation there. What were your thoughts?
Well, one thing I think that stands out, and this is always true about Ohio State, this team doesn't want to kick field goals. They don't want to punt. They want to get the ball in the end zone. They want to kick extra points. And Ryan Day even made a comment today about the certain range. Parker Fleming talked about how far out they would do. And obviously that depends, whether you pooch it, whether you attempt a field goal. And that, he said, depends on weather, depends on certain game situations, things like that, the wind, that type of stuff. So I as much as we talk about they need to be able to make field goals, they want to score touchdowns first and foremost. And I think without saying that today, that was kind of an impression I got was, yes, this is something that we need to be good at. And Parker Fleming even said when Ryan Day says we need to kick a field goal, we have to be ready to go kick a field goal. But this team wants to score points, and you get more points for a touchdown than you do for a field goal. We did have a question I saw come through about the tight ends. That's a group we talked to last week. Jeremy Ruckert, obviously the guy. He's been a factor for that position behind Luke Farrell for the last 2 years. But behind them, they've got some interesting bodies, interesting different types of players. None of these guys played true tight end in high school, which Kevin Wilson pointed out to us last week. I thought that was rather interesting.
Even when they first arrived at Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy Ruckert was really the only one that came in as a tight end, even though he played more receiver in high school. This group can do a lot of different things, I think. You can have your blockers in there. Ruckert's very good at that. I think Cade Stover will be as well, having played linebacker and running back in high school. But, you've also got G. Scott, who is a receiver, one of the top receivers in the country 2 years ago. Jeremy Ruckert obviously has shown what he can do in the pass game. Just what are your takes on what this room may look like, maybe being a little bit more diverse than they've been able to be in the past?
First of all, I agree with Coach Day that 33 reception season for Ben Hartsock back in 2003, that record's getting broken. They're going to finally have a Buckeye receiver reach 30 receptions this year, and he's going to go over 33, not just reach 30. I think Ruckert's going to have a huge year, relatively speaking, meaning 40 receptions-ish. That's a huge year for an Ohio State, a huge year for an Ohio State tight end. And Patrick's right. It's a very intriguing group when you look at those top three backups, we'll call them. Cade Stover's more of the blocker guy, but he's athletic. He was Mr. Football in Ohio. He was a running back in high school. He was mostly known for his work on defense, came here as a linebacker, defensive end, and they moved him to tight end his second year. Now in his third year in the program, second full year as a tight end, I think he's going to play a lot as that number 2 tight end. Very intriguing to me. He's a guy that was one of the best wide receivers in the country, number 10 wide receiver in the country, number 66 overall player in the country in the 2020 class. He's bulked up from about 210 to about 25. Strong kid, tough kid, and he's going to be more of a flex tight end, kind of what Ruckert was earlier in his career. They're not going to ask G. Scott to block a whole heck of a lot in line, but he's still going to have to block, obviously. So those guys are going to play, and they have, they do different things. So depends on what, and you can't always, if we're going to run the ball, we're going to put Stover in there. If we're going to throw the ball, we're going to have Scott in there. You can't do that, or the defense is going to know. The other guy that doesn't get a lot of pub is walk-on Mitch Rossi. He's the fullback of the group. Does Ohio State still have a fullback? They kind of do with Mitch Rossi. We saw it a little bit last year. I think we'll see it a little bit more this year, especially with them not having Luke Farrell, who they really liked. Mitch Rossi's going to get in there, and he's going to help them pound the rock a little bit. That might be a guy that most of the time, when number 34 go in there, they're going to run the ball, but they'll have to throw it sometimes just to keep the defense honest. So guys can do different things. I like that tight end group. A couple of young guys as well, with Joe Royer and Sam Hart. Haven't heard too much about them, but those are kids. Royer, the redshirt freshman, Hart, the true freshman. But I think the top four guys, we clearly know Ruckert's the top guy. I think Stover's going to be number 2, G. Scott 3, Rossi 4. But all 2, 3, and 4 are all going to play a lot as backups because they run a lot of 2 tight end sets.
Exactly, for sure. We're going to wrap it up here. I think we kind of hit on a little bit of everything from, starting with the quarterback and Stroud. Obviously, we have the story up on he himself. He wasn't ready to name a starter. We kind of went through the scrimmage and everything else. This video will be posted on our YouTube page, our Facebook page, or 2. So if you missed anything, you can go back and check it. Subscribe to those channels as well. We're doing more of those now that we're back in season, whether we do them here, whether we do them from our homes. Anytime there's news, anytime we feel like there's something you guys might want to hear about, we'll be doing this a lot more. So be sure to like and subscribe those, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Dave, thanks for joining me today, and we'll be back. We'll probably do something later this week, as we get to see some more practice and whatnot. So thanks again, guys. Thanks, Dave. We'll talk to you.